I think we're all set. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Terrell, and I'm from Music Canada, and I also work with 4479 Toronto, which is our Music City Alliance, or Music City Initiative, rather, in Toronto. And who are we missing? Mike Tanner. Mike's coming. Anyway, so I want to welcome you to our Music Cities Exchange, which we think is going to be kind of a little bit crazy, maybe more like a game show than a panel than what you're used to. But we have representatives up here from 6 different cities who are either a long ways, in some cases they're a long ways in their music strategies, and in some cases they're just beginning. And then I know in the audience we have folks from some of those same cities. We have some additional Toronto people. We have some Calgary folks with us as well who are looking at some initiatives in Alberta. And so we're really happy that everybody's here. And we're going to get things started because we've got a lot of ideas, a lot of issues to discuss. I've already told the panelists, but they're going to be really tight in their answers because we've got so many people up here. We want to give everybody an opportunity to contribute. And then afterwards, there is a networking reception. So those of you who are in the audience and want to learn more about something that was discussed, please seek out that person in the networking up on the rooftop later on. And that goes, of course, for all of you here. So I'm going to start with
Check. Oh, this one's not turned on.
Try this one. How's this one? Okay. All right. Yeah, it's a bit of a mic sharing process up here anyway. So, okay. So we're going to get started by introducing the group up front from your left, and we'll take to the next slide there. So starting with Austin, we have Stephanie Bergera from the music division in Bergera. I always say it wrong, I'm sorry. From the City of Austin. Next, Amanda Garcia from the Austin Convention and Visitors Bureau. Next to Amanda is Mike Shea from South by Southwest, and Chris Brecht from Austin Independent Radio. Chris is also the one who organized the artists to come up here. There's a group of Austin 6, they're calling themselves ATX 6. And hashtag ATX 6. Okay, to Chris's right, we have our sole representative from Chicago, Dylan Rice, the music officer there. Next to Dylan, Jacqueline Norton. She's with the City of Hamilton and Austin, Music and Film Office. And then Tim Podisick from Sonic Onion record label, as well as Super Crawl, big festival there. To his right is Carol Kehoe from the Hamilton Philharmonic Orchestra, and Lou Molinaro from This Ain't Hollywood, and many other initiatives and activities there in Hamilton. To Lou's right, we have Barry Verbanovich, who is a city councilor in Kitchener, and Will Muir from the Sound Distillery, a studio there. To Will's right is Sylvia Di Donato, who's arts and culture at the City of Kitchener, and then Alicia Brilla, who's an artist in Kitchener. And then we have another soul guy, Daniel Seligman from Pop Montreal, who's going to wave the Montreal flag today. To his right is Miranda Mulholland. She's an artist here in Toronto and also on the Toronto Advisory Council. I shouldn't mention that, actually, because there are a bunch of people here who are on their local advisory councils. To Miranda's right is Councillor Mike Layton. And in the empty chair, we have Mike Tanner from North by Northeast, probably called off to some minor detail, something that he had to deal with. And Andrew Weir from Tourism Toronto, and then Zabe Sheikh, the new Director of Entertainment Industries for the City of Toronto, Day 5. Day 5 and counting. All right. So this is your panel, believe it or not. And I'm going to start. We actually wanted to, premiere something today, which we've been working on, just to kind of get things off with a bang. We, as I mentioned, we have this Music City Initiative in Toronto. We call it 4479 Toronto. You will notice, I'm going to play you a video, and you'll notice that, we kind of think a lot of Austin. They're pretty special. And so we are launching today a new video for our website. Take it away.
Tuning up Toronto. Toronto a great music city? You bet. But it could be even greater.
That's the focus of 4479 Toronto's Music City campaign. Toronto is the third biggest music market in North America and a top touring destination. Home to artists of every genre, major and leading independent labels, amazing live venues, world-class studios, and a rich music history. Toronto has signed a Music City alliance with Austin, Texas, which is a third our size but generates 3 times the economic activity in music. How do they do it? Austin's music office facilitates business development, communication between industry and City Hall, and manages live music issues. For example, in Austin, a music-friendly attitude leads to solutions like a loading zone for musicians. In Toronto, bands often get ticketed or towed just trying to load into venues. In 2010, Austin invested almost 350% more in commercial music development than Toronto, multiplied many times by private dollars. Austin is branded as the live music capital of the world. For every dollar it spends on music and film, music alone generates $2 in return. Austin uses music to attract conventions, even hiring local bands for convention entertainment. The GTA generates billions from tourism, but the contribution of music has yet to be measured. The impact of Austin's 2 largest music events increased $25 million each per year for 5 years. In Toronto, we don't have a site for a festival of this magnitude. So how can Toronto become even greater? 1. Create a music office at City Hall. 2. Cut through red tape to create a music-friendly environment. 3. Proactively market Toronto to music tourists. 4. Use music to attract and program conventions. And 5. Support music industry efforts to launch a large-scale music festival. Toronto is a music city without a plan. It's time to plan for greatness. So big shout out to the Beat Academy. Tony's here. Thank you, Tony. Thank you to your producer. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we're just launching that video today and hope to do a series of animated videos like that, promoting some of the great things that are happening here in Toronto and things that we can do. And so thanks for being our first receptive audience. And Mike Tanner has joined us after all. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so we're going to get started. I have an extra mic in my hand, so where do we need it most? How about over here? Dylan. Okay. All right. So each one of these cities, as I mentioned, has music strategies. And so there are a number of common themes, and I thought we would start there in our discussion, and we'll kind of throw it around the room a little bit. So audience development comes up a lot. I notice it in Hamilton, Kitchener, Chicago, certainly. So obviously a big focus. We're always proud of our audiences here in Toronto. Let's start with how about Kitchener, Sylvia? Throw you on the spot. Grab a mic. Okay. So audience development is an important strategy that was identified, and you had a very grassroots process. Maybe you can tell us about the importance of audience development, what you're doing. I know you've got a really neat initiative with downtown. With the BIA, so maybe you can talk about that.
Sure. We have something called Music Works, which was a kind of a grassroots networking process to get venues together, audience, conversations, artists and people in the music industry. And using those networking events, we got to learn more about what we needed to develop audiences, what the venues would need for their support. And particularly some of the things that came out of our downtown programming were to pump up the volume on our downtown live programming, which is live music in the streets, which has kind of overlapped into the clubs now. And that's developed the reputation that really crosses over nicely with a lot of the great music festivals that we have. In terms of in terms of the city-wide, we have more and more opportunities to get every business gathering that's happening. We sort of have a guerrilla policy to encourage them to hire live music. So that seems to be spreading across just to raise the level of awareness with audiences.
That's great. Do you want to add, Barry, do you want to add anything just while we're on the theme?
Sure. Well, certainly, a big part of it for us has been looking at the role that music plays from a quality of life perspective in the community. Many of you know that Kitchener and Waterloo region have a very thriving tech and digital media cluster, and a big part of what goes with that is obviously attracting the right kind of people to the community to both live there and to stay there after university. And the more we talk to that younger demographic, one of the things that's key to them is a thriving live music scene, and so they've been big supporters of seeing it expand. We had a music venue that's in the process of being renovated and reopened by a new operator called the Boathouse. It was very popular in the community, ran into some challenges, but we've got a new operator that's going to be running it, and we're really excited. But what that whole experience of dealing with the Boathouse did was really galvanize the independent music scene in the community and say, you know what, we've really got something special here, so let's capitalize on it and run with it. And since then, it's sort of been going gangbusters over the last couple of years.
That's great. And Tim, can you pick up on that theme in Hamilton? Because I know audience development is important to you. Sometimes the proximity to Toronto doesn't help things a whole lot, and it seems like there's sometimes a lack of appreciation in your own community about the amazing things that are happening. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I know I've been active in, and Lou's been active in, Carol as well, is collaboration. So, from our perspective, it's getting the local community together, collaborating so that we're building that momentum that's going to get people out. And from the perspective of the festival is that we're using the festival as a launching point where we're elevating our local talent to play with international stars when we bring them to town, and it's reflecting in the audiences. The audiences are now seeing the local talent by osmosis, basically. They're coming out to see bigger bands, but by osmosis seeing the local amazing talent that's happening, and then they're coming back out, and that's building that local audience.
Carol, do you want to add something to that?
Well, one of the is that on? Okay,
Here, take this one and I'll switch up.
Just to
pick up on.
It's the way we do it in Hamilton. We just scream.
Just to pick up on what Tim was talking about in terms of engaging the local artists, what I really like is that I run an orchestra, so we have professional classically trained musicians. And through Super Carl, the collaboration that we've done is we're actually starting what we're terming right now an indie series, and we're taking local indie artists and we're partnering them with classically trained musicians to create a whole new genre of music that will be premiered at Super Crawl. So this is one of the real benefits of the collaboration that's happening within our community.
That's great. Well, collaboration, I know, is a big theme in every city, actually. We've been so impressed by Austin and the collaboration that happens there. Stephanie, do you want to pick up on some of these themes about audience development, collaboration among your genres in the community?
Sure. Sorry, I'm so impressed by that video. Like, I'm a little bit I know, we're flattered by all of the support that we've received from Toronto. As far as collaboration goes, there are so many. As far as the city government goes, we manage 19 programs, and a lot of those kind of have collaborative efforts. I know interdepartmentally, as far as the city government goes, we are in our best. It's in our best interest to partner with as many city departments as possible. So as far as the musician loading and unloading zones that were mentioned there, that's something that we partner with the Department of Transportation on, and then we've got another couple of things coming down the pipeline with the Austin Music Foundation, and that's a resource that supports musicians that are based in Austin already. There's 3 programs there: Music Industry Collaborative, which pairs kind of already established mentors with folks who are just kind of on the cusp of hitting that over the part of the success that's just kind of putting them over the edge. I'm sorry. And then as far as collaboration goes, there's another program with the Music Foundation called the Creative Media Center. And what we do there is we pair established artists with musicians who are just up and coming. And they usually have pretty specific questions about touring or producing a CD or setting up social media. The established musicians who are there, musicians and music industry representatives, are there to help them, and they collaborate and kind of figure out what works, what's worked in the past, and what hasn't worked. So I think that's a.
And speaking of working with the music community, Stephanie, and I know this is something that you've been working through right now with South by Southwest, and some of us are developing audiences. South by Southwest has this incredible audience, and really has branded. The city has been built on the South by success, I think, to a large degree. So, but I know that sometimes that leads to challenges, and so you've got to figure out, okay, so what do we do when our audience grows so incredibly, and there's so much happening? How do we manage that as a city? I think that would be a really interesting thing to share with the group as to how you've been working through that process this spring. Sure. Do you want to start with that, Mike? Okay,
Well, watching the video, I realized that I apparently live in the Garden of Eden. It's pretty.
That's what we think.
It seems a little bit different on the ground, but it's nice. It's nice to know. One of the things that I would point out is that Austin, the music scene, the technology scene, the film scene, all of that has grown organically. When I moved to Austin in 1975, it was I was literally standing on Congress Avenue downtown, and I asked where downtown was. So it's grown quite a lot in that period of time. What's happened at South by Southwest, like so many other things, like the Austin City Limits television show, which then became ACL Festival, some of these other things. It was very much a bootstrap type of an event. A bunch of guys got together and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did something like the New Music Seminar in Austin? And it took off from there, from 1987 until now. Now it's reached a point, as you were saying, that the audience has sort of overwhelmed the city. It's really reached a point where we're venue bound. We contract over 70 hotels just to be able to accommodate our attendees, and that's not anywhere near enough. 6th Street, the other entertainment districts are just all asses and elbows during South by Southwest. You literally can't stretch out during the worst of it. So what's happening right now is we're in a situation, and actually for the last several years, where we've been trying to convince the South by Southwest has been trying to convince the city that something needed to be done about this, especially in the areas of code enforcement for public safety. And so that's what we've been working on quite a bit. We've been working on trying to get regulations passed. We've been working on trying to get codes enforced on everybody, not just the South by Southwest official events, but all of the people who rent parking lots and warehouses and all of that kind of thing. And so now we're working on that. You might be able to address, they've started a new office called the ACE office. I think it's the Austin Center for Events. Does that sound right? And the idea is to make a one-stop shop where anybody who's trying to put on an event of any different size could go there, fill out a questionnaire, be told what they needed to do.
So I'm gonna pick up on that idea of a one-stop shop, because that's another common theme that appears in these music strategies. Dylan, you're nodding, so you get the next. Okay. You get the mic next. Oh, you got it already. You're eager.
Yes.
So Dylan, tell us about where that's coming from in Chicago. Why you feel there's a need for a one-stop shop. What do you mean by that? What would it do?
Well, the Chicago city government is absolutely huge, and I was thinking about what Stephanie was saying about just learning how to collaborate with other departments. I've been in my position for a year and 9 months, and just trying to get buy-in and build alliances inside city government, and understand all of what the departments do to help. Like, for example, one venue would need to interface with 5 different departments, for public health, buildings, etc. And so rather than try to reinvent the wheel, I'm working with this new small business center that's been developed inside our business affairs department, and I'm creating a toolkit for venues and people who do events indoors on how to understand the processes. You know, if you are a restaurant owner and you just want to add live music to your venue, you need what's called a public place of amusement license. And some people are either confused or intimidated by the process. So I'm becoming the liaison to them, and I'm trying to help them understand, like, don't be afraid of it. Here's what you have to do. And so the hope is that this toolkit will help streamline the processes to get the licenses sooner. And the idea is that, you know, more music activity in the neighborhoods is good for everybody. It's good for quality of life. It's good for the economy, especially when the strategy that the mayor has of developing arts and culture hubs and arts and culture districts, especially in areas that are challenged economically. You know, if you can help facilitate, you know, more businesses opening up that promote music and culture in general, you're going to have this ripple effect, and that's where you have success stories like the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago really transformed the Lincoln Square neighborhood into a destination, you know, nightlife district essentially.
That's great. And there's some things that I've seen in your report too that have been picked up in other communities for sure. The around the idea of a one-stop shop, it's something we've been talking about for a while in Toronto. So maybe start with you, Mike. Do you want to comment on that, and from your own personal experience, why that would help you do your job easier or better?
Sure. Yeah. Right now, my life is all about permits and paid duty officers and insurance certificates and things like that. So having an active and engaged and well-connected one-stop shop. I think the understanding is something like Don Pitt's position in Austin, where there's special events and police and fire and transportation all within shouting distance would be great, because our city bureaucracy, with the best of intentions, is so large that sometimes people in this department have never met, and they have no idea what people in that department are doing or what the processes are or anything like that. One comment I would like to make about a one-stop shop, though, would be as we move towards doing that in Toronto, it would be great if that person in that position is not simply somebody who picks up the phone when there's a noise complaint. We need to have a one-stop shop, I think, that has a business development capacity to it, a tourism capacity to it, that liaises with all different parts of the industry, and isn't just saying, well, you know, you need this form, here it is online.
I can elaborate a little bit on what this
Sure.
Center for Events is. So the one-stop shop that they're talking about is the Austin Center for Events. Mike was correct. It's in a building in downtown Austin, and is the home base for the special events divisions of the fire department, the police department, the health department, code compliance, our music division, and then I believe that's transportation, special events, street closures, and things like that. It's a one-stop shop. In addition to that, last year we introduced a combined application. So it's a 9-page application. 9 times out of 10, whoever is filling out the application doesn't have to fill out every page. So it ends up being about 4 pages. But that's what everyone's talking about, is the one-stop shop on our end. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. But it's definitely been able to put people, you know, during South by Southwest, we see over 100 permit applications. And, you know, we pretty much approve over 100. But we don't want to be in the business of making it more difficult than it needs to be. So the one-stop shop has definitely helped in that regard.
So Zabe, day 5, right? Yeah, we put your job description up there in that video. I'm sure you saw that.
I saw that video, yeah.
Just teasing. So I think you've come into, I mean, you were hired, you've told me, I don't know, maybe someone can verify in the room, that part of your philosophy is to definitely facilitate that business development with music, but also across the creative sectors. Do you want to talk about that and how?
Sure.
You know, yeah.
I mean, I think I happen to be representing, along with my Toronto cohorts here, actually I think the largest municipality on this panel, with due respect to Chicago. Toronto is actually just beat out Chicago recently as the most populated city in North America on this. So we're behind Mexico City, Los Angeles, New York, and then it's Toronto, and then Chicago. The reason I'm saying that is because when Mike talks about a bureaucracy, you remember that the bureaucracy is taking care of, or in theory taking care of, the vast population that it's meant to serve. So when you look at strategies, you have to look at the strategies as a cohesive and a comprehensive look and a collaborative look. And I think what's great about me being day 5 on the job is that the job is about re-envisioning, I think, from Toronto, that this city requires a mechanism, because that's what really cities are. Municipalities are mechanisms, systems. They're not the industry itself. They're not the population of the industry. They're not even the distribution of the industry. They're actually the mechanism that allows the content, the skills, the resources, and the distribution to flow through. So it behooves municipalities of whatever size to actually collaborate on a systems level, on a resources level, and then on an industry-wide level. So when we look at the music industry, we're talking about a media entertainment industry. We're not just talking about music, because we don't live in a world where music is just music anymore. We don't live in a world where film is just film. We live in a world where when I play a video game, or my kid plays a video game, she's amazingly already is tapped into new music and old music. When she goes to the sports, when she goes to the Raptors game, playing the Nets, one of the biggest global music stars, who happens to be from Toronto, is sitting there. When she goes to the films, there's music because there's a soundtrack. So that already indicates to me that collaboration is happening on an industry-wide level on the street. So we at the city, I think, in terms of all the mechanisms and organizations at the city, are now, we always have had a robust industry. I think what that video showed was, and it doesn't necessarily speak to, because it's trying to make a point, and it's making its point very clearly, but what it doesn't, what it kind of says is that music is, we're the 3rd largest city when it comes to music happening. So that's actually a really positive sign for me, and I think it is for everyone in this room. What that means is, how do we take that amazing resource, how do we take that 3rd largest resource in North America, and when we say 3rd, we're talking New York and LA, which are pretty vibe cities, at Chicago, Boston, all those kind of grand cities. We're talking top tier cities. Austin, smaller communities can be top tier in very specific ways because they can gear themselves, which is really key. We can learn a lot from how Austin gears ourselves. We have to remember in Toronto and larger communities that we're also servicing a film empire, if you will, a fashion empire, a food empire. Everyone believes that they are the top. We've got amazing chefs here. We got Momofuku coming in. You know, everyone wants Toronto to succeed on a cross-collaborative level, but they all want it to succeed in their ways. So I think now what's great about the job, and what's great about getting to work with all these people and all you guys in the room, hopefully as we go down the road, is that Toronto is going to be the city that can, as a mechanism, comprehensively strategize how this media entertainment resource that we have, that we bring in internationally and that we grow locally, can help the world, help money get spent, and help make things easy. Obviously, a civic mechanism will have to be in place as well in terms of permits, licensing, one-stop shopping. We have that in film already, and now I think I'm very excited that music is very much going to be a prominent part of that next one-stop shop.
Okay, Zig. You used all your time there. You know that, right? Okay, all right. You won't need that.
I got nothing else to say.
Yeah, okay, good.
I was going to say, hey,
Yeah.
next mayor of Toronto, right here.
Yeah.
Guy can talk.
Yeah. So there are a ton of themes that I'd like to pick up on there, but I'm going to throw in, you mentioned collaboration with a number of different industries. I'm going to go to Kitchener because of the tech. So let's talk about, and it's something that Austin does superbly as well, but let's talk about Kitchener and tech, music and tech, and what's happening there and why those two industries are working together. So you're going to start?
Sure. We have We have a really strong tech sector in Waterloo Region, very famously known for software development and engineering. But I think that's a strength that we've got now, because that digital media sector is interweaving with the downtown live music venues and the artists. And we actually consult with stakeholders to see what it is they need to succeed, surrounded by that kind of technology, and including Will, who has a studio, and they could probably add to more on that.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, my business partner and I were looking for a location to put a recording studio, and we decided to put it 3 blocks away from Google's head office. A pretty cool little hub, lots of things going on, but it had a vibe to it. A lot of young people doing some cool things, and here, my business partner and I, 2 young guys just wanting to make some good music. And what we found is that a lot of young, talented people flocked to this area, downtown Kitchener. Talent sort of attracts other talent. And through this, a lot of the younger talent that we would work with were using Instagram, YouTube. There's a video hosting company that works with the Junos around the corner from the studio. Put a video out there, and it attracted one of the fellows from George Strait from Austin, Texas. And so now we're getting some guys from Austin through George Strait. I've got some fellows from Pantera coming up in September, also from Texas. And they're integrating with some of the younger musicians and tech companies locally. And we're actually working right now with a tech company doing drum samples, just so that young kids can have our drum samples on their iPhones to make their own recordings on their iPads, computers, etc. And it's also being integrated with a college campus about a block away from the studios. Within 3 years, we have a studio, a great tech sort of community, and now college all integrating with one another, and some pretty cool things happening. So,
great.
Yeah.
It's something you guys really focus on, Dylan, in Chicago, global hub for, so not just music, not just creative industries. I know when you were at South by Southwest, your Chicago-made, I think, presence, you made it pretty clear that you're talking about innovation, you're talking about technology. Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, so we created a brand called Chicago Made, and we unveiled it at South by Southwest, and it was in the form of a music showcase with the rap phenom Chance the Rapper headlining it, and a bunch of other bands. And then we had a trade show booth element where we had meet and greets, an interactive booth promoting, our thought leaders, our makers, we called them. We had an online campaign, ChicagoMade.us, and then we had a networking event. And we basically thought that it could be two-pronged. It could be B2B, so, reminding people that Chicago is a great place to record your album, to invest in Chicago. Like, we can be a conduit of resources and explain, these are the kinds of incentives that exist, and this is the kind of infrastructure, these are the neighborhoods you may want to look at. But it was the other prong was the tourism-facing side. So our CVB, which is called Choose Chicago, they helped us really promote the hell out of our showcase. And there's so many fans now that are at South by, and we want to make sure that they remember, to keep Chicago front of mind. So not just for Lollapalooza, for Pitchfork festivals, but for year-round concerts that happen in our amazing venues and neighborhoods. So we're going to keep going with the brand. We're going to come back again to South by, and we're right now trying to figure out ways to make it a living brand. And keep going with it.
I think you also had your mayor speaking about creating cultural spaces in the city, which as a keynote interview, I saw that. We were going to bring our mayor down, but thought plans went awry.
Oh, you had to go there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to go to artist support, but you brought up tourism, so that's another big topic that we could spend a bit of time on. So let's go there. So tourism development, Dylan's mentioned it. Let's start with Andrew. We've been talking to Tourism Toronto a lot about music and how it is a motivator for travelers, something that you already knew for certain, and so we're looking at ways that we can do more with that. Where do you think the potential lies?
The tourism opportunity with music is a couplefold. First, from a city like Toronto, where diversity is our DNA, and the sheer breadth of things, you know, whether it's World Pride this week or just look at the music in this month alone with North by Northeast Jazz Festival, of course, and you know, Luminato had some musical elements to it. It's incredible, the diversity. There's I think a South Asian artist playing at the Air Canada Centre tomorrow and sold out, 20,000 people. So there is a tremendous market here for anything, and because of that market, industry responds to the demand. So there's a tremendous amount of music on offer here, and we've got to capture that diversity. So what it means is that whatever you're into, you can get into it here in Toronto, and that's a position that serves us very well. But from a tourism standpoint, music helps us two ways. There's two very broad sectors or segments of tourists. The first is the people that are here, and the second group is the people that aren't here but are thinking about maybe coming. So music can help attract people that may be sitting at home and contemplating a trip, and this is the same for any destination. Music does attract people. They will get on a plane or a bus or in their car or whatever it is and travel for music. We all know that. But we can't lose sight of the other group, which is the people that are here probably for some other reason, maybe on business, maybe they're just here on a leisure trip, and we've got to tap into that market as well and talk to people while they're here through databases of what's on now, apps, and all the different ways we can talk to people, including some of the things that we do, and you know, Music Canada's played a role in that, and others around the city. But we've got to show people that music is not just a festival. It's not just something that's here for a great weekend. It's 7 days a week, every week of the year, in every part of the city, whatever your taste, and there's not a lot of economic sectors that can make that claim, that you can deliver a product or an experience for anyone on any day in any part of the city. So that great strength of music is something we've got to continue to tap into and not only use it as a trip motivator, but also grow the yield of visitors and get people to do more and spend more and consume more when they're here. And music's got a great power to do that.
Yeah, studies certainly show that people who are cultural tourists will stay longer, spend more. So we like that. Let's turn to Amanda. She's eager to talk about, I mean, I don't know, has everyone seen the Airstream, the Austin Airstream around town? So, you know, Austin tends to do this pretty well, so let's turn to Amanda Garcia to talk about tourism, Austin, what you do.
Sure. So just kind of going off of the Airstream trailer, one of the big ways that we promote leisure travel to Austin is by doing our summer road trips with our ATX Airstream that we're very proud of. It's a 1974 Airstream trailer that we basically found on the side of a road outside of Austin and figured out who we need to talk to buy it, and then worked with local artists and musicians to basically gut the inside and rebuild it from the top to the bottom. And inside is, I can go on forever about, you know, all the bits and pieces that are very ostentatious, I'll skip that and we could talk about it over the reception. But from the second that our sales team is going after convention groups, as the video mentioned, we are branded the live music capital of the world. So that is in every single conversation. From the second, you know, it could be the National Funeral Directors Association thinking about having their convention in Austin, and I have to say, when they were in town, they booked more music than any other convention that was in town that year. They literally booked over 25 acts, and it was everything from their welcome reception to their registration hours. So when people were going to pick up their badges, they were listening to Rattle Tree Marimba, which is a steel drum band in Austin.
So let me just say, that was live music, right?
Live.
Funeral directors and
Yes.
live music. Okay.
Yeah, you know, they like to let loose when they're out of town. But that's one thing that we do. I mean, the second that the convention groups are coming to town, whether they're in Austin or we're going to them with our sales team, whether it's at a trade show or a sales mission, we have live music with us. We hire musicians to go on the road with us. We have some in front of our Airstream right now. But, you know, whether it's a full band, we had at a PCMA Foundation dinner, which is a huge a convention for people who plan conventions. But in the meetings world, it's the top of the line, and we hosted a dinner there and had an 8-piece band with us from Austin, Texas. So everywhere that we go, we make sure that we're living the brand, and yeah, that's part of it.
Good. I'm going to prey upon Dan, who's being very patient from Montreal. So Pop Montreal, one of the great music tourism assets in Montreal, 50,000 fans, I think, roughly. And but I do notice that there isn't, at least not visible to me, as just researching, that there's not a visible strategy for music with the tourism Montreal, and yet they do certainly promote the festivals. What do you see as working in Montreal in terms of tourism? What's working for you from your festival perspective?
Well, we do work with Tourism Montreal. I mean, we're definitely one of this, like, we're a successful and kind of like, moderately big festival, but there are three or four very large music festivals in Montreal that draw, millions of people. The Jazz Fest is probably the greatest example of that. And going back to working with the city department, Montreal has the Office of Festivals and Special Events that deal with permits and all the other things that you need to put on large-scale events. And more recently, there's the downtown area around Place des Arts is an area called the Quartier des Spectacles, the like entertainment district basically, and the city has invested millions of dollars in kind of making it accessible to do large-scale events, so you can have 200,000 people downtown for an outdoor free concert, or like 5 or 6 different stages happening. So I think Montreal is definitely ahead of the game in that respect in terms of large-scale events in a downtown city. In terms of tourism, we work with them probably more on a small scale to bring in journalists, and they have specific officers who not only bring journalists in on our recommendations, but also assign like a person to hang out with them and take them to different restaurants and show them different parts of the city that they wouldn't necessarily be able to find on their own. Yeah, so I think Montreal, definitely has a lot going on in terms of, mechanisms within the city to facilitate culture and events. I had a few points because I mean, obviously Austin is a great example of like how a small market can really become like a destination point. Turning to Toronto, I feel like even though Austin is a great example, the cities are so drastically different. To model yourself after Austin wouldn't make sense because the population is 3 or 4, 3 times the size. It's like apples and oranges. So I feel like Toronto has to find a Toronto solution for a Toronto issue, and like if you try to model something after Austin, I don't know how successful it'll be.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I would say that that is a true point. North by Northeast. This is the 20th year of North by Northeast, and we helped start that with Now Magazine 20 years ago. In a city the size of this, to capture everyone's attention is much more difficult than in a city the size of Austin. And but also another point, a lot of geographic entities do come down to South by Southwest and exhibit in the trade show to promote themselves, like Chicago does and Canada does, and we encourage that behavior.
Yeah, Quebec does that as well. And 2 other points. I think studies have shown that tourism is kind of going towards more of niche marketing or targeting. People have niche interests, so they go to a city for a specific thing, and they're not necessarily going for the huge, big event anymore. So it might be better to focus on niche stuff, and to create some Toronto super festival isn't necessarily, desirable when you have Illuminato, you have North by Northeast, you have Gay Pride, you have like all these amazing things happening, and you're not necessarily going to get 1 million people to come to Toronto for some mega festival when people could be coming here throughout the year all the time for the various events.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, one of the things I wonder about sometimes when we talk about tourism for festivals like Pop or South by Southwest or ACL or North by Northeast, Canadian Music Week, is I wonder if sometimes the traditional ways in which we view a tourist are not capturing some of the people or some of the demographic. I mean, for example, in our office we have young people who are passionate about music, who, pardon the expression, don't have a pot to piss in, but they'll go to Coachella and they'll couch surf, and they won't be playing rounds of golf, and they won't be staying at the expensive downtown hotels, and they won't be buying expensive meals, but they're still there. And they'll go back year after year after year, and they'll get a t-shirt. And sometimes when I look at even some of the programs that we apply for as a festival, and there are actually, the province has got these ways of defining tourists with these catchy phrases that put them into categories. There's no category that talks to the kind of person who works in my office and goes to Coachella. It's just not there. Couch surfer. I don't know. We don't have that term yet. And what that term means, and who she is, and what she's doing, and what her interests are, and what kinds of tourist outreach engage her. And I think we've talked a little bit about this, and I think Tourism Toronto is certainly aware of this, and I think clearly moving in the right direction. But to me, I think as an industry, the tourist industry still has a little way to go before they're talking about the kind of tourists that we would bring in.
Mike?
Just to comment very quickly on this notion that Toronto should have its own made in Toronto solution, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that big show. If Field Trip, and I don't know how many people have heard of it on the panel, I hope none of you, because if Field Trip gets any bigger, it's going to outgrow the space, and that'll ruin it. It's in a very unique space, it's in a very beautiful space, it's a very beautiful and appropriate festival.
It's in his ward.
It's in my ward as well. And I don't want to, trust me, and I get complaints from neighbors about it because there's 20,000 condo dwellers that live right next to it, which didn't live there 5 years ago. But we're still, like, it could be that those little niches, those that are what draw people, that the uniqueness of them. And the one thing that certainly I feel, and I think I've heard, it's about breaking that. It's one about breaking the silos in large institutions like the City of Toronto, the bureaucratic silos that people exist in, but trying to make it easier for folks that want to start out a North by Northeast or a Field Trip or a South by Southwest. More votes. And so if we can be, like, we're often looked to as being the champion for street festivals, for instance. Why is it that I've got to call the meeting between right-of-way management, parking enforcement, the police, the ambulance and stuff? There should be a coordinating body. And for the most part, for business-related BIAs, they have folks that sort of hold the hands of the coordinators that can often be very new to the job. We're starting a new BIA on Ossington Street. We've got 3 live music venues and a theater. They want to shut the street down every weekend. Great. They have no expertise in doing it, and the first year is going to be a show. It'll be an interesting show.
Uncomfortable.
What were you going to say?
Well, it's going to be interesting to try to work out. Yeah. But there's those growing pains. Well, if we had that champion, which I think we heard that we just now hired, to put together a staff that's going to help hold hands and break down those silos, I really think that's that we need to take. And that might be the example. It might not be a template, but it may just be, here's the steps that we took to make it so great, so that we can have all those, the uniqueness of it being Toronto, and it reflect the diversity of our city rather than reflect the diversity and size of Austin, Montreal, Chicago, or
We've talked a lot about business-friendly type things. I'm going to turn to artist-friendly discussions, or musician-friendly. Not to stick with Toronto, but Miranda and I have had a conversation. I know how passionate she is about this. So often, she made the point earlier to me that so often we're talking about music tours and we're talking about all of these things that really it's the artist who's at the heart of this. So Miranda, do you want to talk about, you're on the Music Advisory Council. I know you're really excited to be there. What is it that you feel you can bring to discussions in the city? What do you hope to accomplish for the musicians in Toronto?
Yeah, well, one thing I think it's hard as an artist sometimes listening to these discussions because artists tend to feel like sort of the parsley on plates, you know, sort of the last thing that's going to make something look nice. and I think that what I love about Austin, I've been to South by many times with different bands, and is the value that they put on the musicians. And there's a lot of things that you can do to that, from macro to micro. And here in Toronto, we have a really great community. Hamilton as well, Kitchener. We have such great little pockets that have sprung up and have built very strong community fabrics with musicians who are collaborating and doing a lot of cross-genre things going on. It's really exciting. And you know, we chat on tour with other musicians, and one of the things that we can do to enforce and to keep local musicians here and in our towns, and then to also attract international musicians, is to value the musicians. And this can be such a small thing, from parking. You know, we've had our van towed before in Toronto, and you know, you got sound check. It's a big hassle. But things that I think they've done in Austin as well is have there's some healthcare opportunities for musicians, especially if we can go across the board and work together in all these different businesses. Things like healthcare might be possible, special things like dental, even coming together and putting some pressure on some of the sponsors, even to allow musicians to have access to this at perhaps a little cheaper, as we are this sort of commodity. Even something so macro as air travel. Imagine if all the businesses that we represent, that we work together with, say went to one airline and said, Air Canada, we will support you, and we will brand you, and we'll, as the musician-friendly airline, if you allow our musicians to take on their instruments on your plane. You know, I've been kicked off a plane with a 100-year-old violin because I couldn't put it underneath because of it will crack in the cold. So I mean, something like that, if we can sort of use all our influences to help the commodity that is the musician at the very heart of all of this.
I'll just pick up on one thing, and that is that there is something being developed in Canada called the Unison Benevolent Fund, which is actually an umbrella or safety net for musicians and artists. So it's something we can certainly talk about. But I'm going to pick up Chris. Wait, Chris, hello. Oh, hi. No, I'm teasing you. So Chris, speaking of airfares, Chris just spent the last 2 months since they announced their intention to bring 6 musicians up here, raising money to bring those musicians here and cover their costs. And I know that the artist is really important to you, Chris, in terms of what what you're doing now to help promote the artists who you've brought and what you hope to do, and you've got great plans for the future, and using, in our case, the alliance with Toronto to kind of stimulate some of that. So talk to us about what you feel is important for the artists and musicians in promotion.
I think the alliance, for one, is very serendipitous to the time and the idea of what we're doing right now. I am so in favor of the artist. I am an artist. I went to Austin as a songwriter. It's such an artist-friendly community. It's an artist destination. Don't think that the artists don't hear that Austin is the live music capital of the world, because that's what attracts, you know, some songwriter from Denver like me that thinks that he's going to get to play shows every week. Maybe you don't make as much money at those shows as you want, but you get to play those shows. And so obviously where this kind of went was there are some opportunities that maybe the artists don't get. They do get great health care. In that healthcare in Austin, it's actually somebody opened the door, the idea to, you know, acupuncturists and dental places to offer themselves. And we have such a strong community of small businesses in Austin that pay attention to what the artists are doing, because I think that they know that the artists that are in Austin are the reason why so many tax dollars come into that city, so many music fans come into that city, and it's to pay attention to what they're doing as artists. So being that type of community that we are, there's also some opportunities that kind of get missed. And with this alliance, it just so happens that we created something where we wanted to bring songwriters up here to North by Northeast because it's very hard to tour out of Austin. It's a very landlocked city. Texas is not as big as Canada, but it's very big, and gas is expensive. And so just like you were talking about air travel, that couldn't be more relevant to what we did. We went to our local businesses, specifically the venues like the Black Heart and the Mohawk, and actually the Mohawk wasn't a sponsor, but they will be next year, and the White Horse, you know. But we said, these are the Austin music artists that are playing your venues week in and week out, and we want to send them to Toronto. So basically we're creating this new idea of exporting our artists from Austin. And leaving it up to us to kind of get the ball rolling, but we're going to do a whole venue nomination process coming up next year and let our venues nominate a female and a male, all the sponsors, and then throw them into a pool, and we'll sit down with a panel, maybe some folks from the Austin Chronicle, myself, maybe Stephanie or Don Pitts, and we'll kind of go through the pot and create something that has actually to try to take this whole talk, you know, a step further, which is improving the artist lifestyle, you know, down there, which is really important. And so I think not only is North by Northeast an opportunity, but there's a whole world of opportunities to get songwriters out of Austin with the help of small businesses. You know, to them, $500 is a lot, but to a business, it's really not that much, you know. And to the artist, that amount of money scares them a lot. So I think that right now we have some very grateful artists, and I think we have you know, a lot of good ideas on the table of how we can go. Once we wrap this up in 3 days, there's going to be we're going to be looking for something new to create for these people going forward. So yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Alicia. So Kitchener is a very different place, I think, from Austin, from Toronto for sure, but I know that you feel that there is support in Kitchener for artists. Can you tell us about that? What works for you in Kitchener?
Yeah. Well, I moved to Kitchener when I was 13 from Brampton. Do you know Brampton, anybody? A city that obviously we're not talking about today because there's not a lot of art there, to be honest, at least from what I experienced growing up. And so when I moved to Kitchener, I was like completely blown away by how much of a art infrastructure there was, like the conversations about art that happened just on a regular day-to-day basis walking on the street. And yeah, I mean, Kitchener's amazing, like Sylvia was mentioning, and well, there's a big tech community there, which I've, you know, collaborated with for different videos, websites, all the awesome tech stuff that is now, you know, integrated with music. And yeah, it's great. I think that it's amazing that artists and people who support art are having these conversations because, like Miranda right, was saying, Miranda, I mean, I've done shows before, I've met certain people in charge of, you know, event planning or music, and where they don't really know what artists, what a day in the life of artists is, or what a sound check is, or stuff like that. And it's funny that they're programming, you know, these events, but they aren't fully aware of like what it entails often. So I think perhaps having like an artist liaison, like liaisons are great, people to further educate people in charge of that, and vice versa is great. So yeah.
It's good. And Dylan, in Chicago, there are a number of different initiatives for artist support and development. I read about grants, some different things. Do you want to tell us what, you know, what's working so far?
Well, we've had a granting program for many years for individual artists, and we've noticed that not a lot of musicians were aware of
Toronto, and the more and more that we start becoming more aware, or the more that Canada becomes aware of Hamilton as a market, I think, you know, sometimes there's a bit of a struggle that happens. And
we got a radius clause.
I'm sorry. Well, you know what? We know, but we're that dog that keeps tugging on that pant leg until you finally say, okay, we give. But I think validation's an important thing. I mean, you know, music is a very, very integral part of our city and our community and our infrastructure, and it's improving because just like Kitchener was saying that they're partnering up with tech companies, the thing that Hamilton is doing is we're partnering up with other artists graphic artists, visual artists, classical musicians. And so all of a sudden now, our community is expanding and it's getting bigger. So to me, I think there is no other city other than Hamilton that should always be hosting the Junos because, no, and I think
Alan?
we merit that. Like, I mean, it's just, that's just my personal point of view. But I think, just like Nashville's always a city.
Designers, whipping up your album cover for iTunes, and it's like all done within a 6-month program for, people maybe aged, 18-ish, like high school, late high school, right? But they bring in about 10 to 12 different people for a 6-month program. Now, I know me, like I'm a fairly small operation, but I've been helping out some young kids in high schools through co-op, basically setting them up with like mentors, whether it be country musicians or blues musicians. And what they do is bring them underneath their wing for a few months, and then instead of maybe working at like McDonald's or somewhere else, they will bring them out on the road and show them how to interact with engineers and how to handle a sound check. And then I've had one young fella, he was 17 when he started working at the studio. He's now 18. Grade 12, and he's touring full-time in the summertime instead of working at like a grocery store. And like, it's pretty cool that he started on my side of the glass, got an interest in the other side, and now he's doing this. And like, I'm noticing it's snowballing, right? There's more and more young kids that are coming to me in the studio saying, you can have a small little community here that's going to ripple outwards. I know from Hamilton, Daniel Lanois is a big fan and a big, proponent of scene building and really taking young people and putting them into odd situations and seeing what's going to come of them, right? And so like, what happens if you have a hub where you have like a graphic designer, just like you do in the Remix project in other different cities,
Those are great
under one
examples.
roof, right? So I don't know, there's some cool things going on. You just got to really dig a little deeper to find them, right?
That's good. And music education is important to us. Alan Reed asked for the mic from Karis. So Alan, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm the new president of Karis, the Juno Awards, and I run a charity called Music Counts, which is a music education charity. And through a partnership with TD Bank Group, we actually created a program called the TD Community Music Grants Program, where community centers for at-risk kids can apply to us for up to $25,000 in grants to basically create, and the Remix project is sort of the model of what we want to do. So last year we awarded $200,000. We're just in the midst of actually awarding $220,000 to 16 different organizations across the country right now. And this program's going to be running for the next 3 years. And it's exactly what you're looking at, Chloe, is how we can help young people find a way through the music industry, not just as players, but also as DJs, as remixers, as producers, whatever the case may be. So if there's community organizations out there who want to access these funds, this program is up and running for the next 3 years, awarding over $200,000 each year.
Thanks, Alan. I think Tony had a question.
I actually just wanted to make a comment. My name's Tony. I'm with an organization called the Beat Academy based in Toronto. And I heard a comment about supporting young people to leave the city and just kind of get artists out of the city, exporting artists. And thanks to the 4479 initiative, and I guess just a whole lot of elbow grease, we came up with this concept of doing a Toronto versus Texas beat battle for producers, because producers are not conventional artists. They're usually behind the boards. Nobody knows who they are. And so what we did is we created a competition between producers where they'd be coached by Grammy Award-winning producers. So in Toronto's case, it was Boy Wonder, who produces for Drake. And he coached the team for 6 weeks. And this music education idea is our approach to what we call experiential learning. And so for just to your comment, to your question, Chloe, I know that there is a lot happening on the grassroots level with, for example, Beat Academy. We started as a collective of people doing live beat battles in the Drake, and just kind of getting producers together and them asking for more and more things until we became this. And really, for us, it feels like going to South by Southwest and doing that competition where, people knew who Boy Wonder was, but we had, 16 people on a team that most people had never heard of. And we had lineups out the door.
I couldn't get in. I tried to get in, and
right,
it was
we turned away some pretty, high-profile people without us knowing.
Like Mike
but yeah, like Mike. But we'll exchange contact. I'll make sure you get in. I'll put you on the VIP list because it's going to be bigger and better next year. But to that point, the experiential learning piece, we realized how much growth happened with the producers. They built their mentorship and connections and relationships. We're doing another show tomorrow for North by, so because of South by, we were able to do North by. We went from a 300-person venue now to a 600-person venue. We went from Toronto versus Texas to Canada versus the U.S. And this is really based on people who nobody really knows, right? Like, nobody really knows who these local producers are. These are kids who just graduated high school, who are just on their computer in their basement making music, hoping somebody will hear it. And so, I mean, there's a lot happening, and I think I think it's timely that, we have a music office and that, we're really, and I think it's also serendipitous because, Remix, before Remix was Remix, it was I See Visions, which is a bunch of teenagers, myself included, who said, this is what we want the city to look like for our peers who, want to be involved in the music scene. So I think usually it's policy and bureaucracy usually catches up with what's happening with the grassroots, but I think, I think things are moving at a really good pace with, with what Music Counts is doing, with what the Beat Academy is doing, and having festivals gives our young people an opportunity to showcase in these different parts of the world. So, producers can't apply to do a showcase. If they said, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna play a guitar? What are you gonna do? And they're saying, I'm gonna use an MPC and make music. People don't quite understand what that is. So having these festivals and allowing us to do things, the work that we do, really gives them the opportunity to get on a stage in ways that they would have never done before.
And I think that I thought one of the other ideas I wanted to discuss just briefly was the idea about international partnerships. And I mean, we hope that this is the beginning of an international partnership among all of you and with all of those here. But and Tony's given us an example where that's an international partnership across the borders from Austin to Toronto. I know a number of you are also looking to build partnerships with other cities, and anyone want to jump in on that? Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, I think we've had a lot of questions about what the Toronto-Austin Alliance really means. Is it tangible? Is it just signatures on a piece of paper? Does it have any real-world value? And I would say, this being a perfect example, you guys being here, there are about 6 things happening at North by Northeast. We just happen to be one of the first large events to land with strong connections to Austin. And they're tangible, and they're providing opportunities for artists to showcase and for venues to have unusual things happen, and for the people of both cities to see, what's going on. So there is a very tangible thing happening, and I think what would be great would be if a lot of the cities represented on the panel today move in that direction. I mean, wouldn't it be great if it was a continent-wide hub where all these sorts of things are being exchanged? I think we can move in that direction.
Yeah, I think this kind of collaboration is really key as we move forward, and I really want to acknowledge Music Canada for taking the opportunity of organizing this during North by Northeast, because it gave us this opportunity to have this dialogue. I think we can make much better use of technology going forward. I mean, I think all of us have heard of things like Cisco telepresence, for example. It exists in most of our cities. Looking at how do we partner with companies like them so that we can get this dialogue going on a more regular basis. Obviously, travel costs can be a problem sometimes, but there's no reason we can't hook up every quarter for a couple hours and have a dialogue and get a corporate partner like them or somebody else to make this kind of thing happen going forward. For us, in terms of international partnerships, they have been part of the development, particularly of things like our festivals. Some of you may have heard of a small little German festival in Kitchener called Oktoberfest. Second largest one in the world, and obviously we have a lot of connections with the original in Munich. Our TD Kitchener Blues Festival has in the last couple of years been reaching out to the Chicago Blues Festival and looking at how do we take another corporate relationship that exists in our community, namely the fact that we now have American Airlines flying into Waterloo Region Airport a couple times a day and into the Chicago hub, and saying, how do we build on that as a link between our two communities and a couple of the greatest blues festivals in North America? So that, I think, is important. And really what all of this speaks to is the fact that our successes really can be built on the role that each of us plays within a strong ecosystem. And there is a role for local government, but there's a role for business. There's a role for not-for-profits and so on, and each of them have to be part of it. Our Governor General here in Canada used to live in Waterloo Region, David Johnson. He refers to it as sort of the barn-building spirit of Waterloo Region. But listening to all the stories, I think it's the barn-building spirit of each of our communities, and trying to use that to build the music scene through all these different collaborations that exist.
Stephanie, you wanted to...
I wanted to just add on to what Mike was talking about as far as tangibles and the Alliance goes. The Alliance on the Austin side was announced about 2 weeks ago, actually. This North by Northeast is the first large-scale festival that has happened since then. And I was talking to Zeb about it yesterday. The successes and the things that we can accomplish in year one are going to be critical to moving forward year two and further. So, pardon me, I know on the Austin side there's already been some discussions about tangibles and key points that we want to focus on in year one. So I know that there will be a lot of stuff on the Austin side that will be coming, forward with in the coming months. But yeah, year one is highly important to us as far as, nailing down some brass tacks for sure.
Any final question, or I think we're pretty good. So how about here? Anybody? Was there some burning thought or idea? Oh, of course.
I was very silent for a long time. Come on.
All right, you were very well.
I did my spiel and then I shut up. I think it's to sort of synthesize, which is such a cliche word now, but it's cliche for a reason. This whole discussion, I would just say, it seems like whether you're a municipality, whether you're an artist, whether you're an industry leader, whether you're a producer, whether you're a guitarist, whether you're a vocalist, whether you're an engineer or a mixer, the key things, I come from the film and television background as an artist, so when you guys speak about artists, that's very key to me as well. I'm not just what one
Pretty
might...
face.
That's very kind of you. No, I'm not just what we tend to think of, or what I used to tend to think of as a bureaucratic person. Artists have to become bureaucratic people too to help change, initiate change. All of us in this room, in some way, shape, or form, are taking that leadership just by being here. But I think if you sort of look at yourself, how diverse are you? And by diverse, I don't mean just color or gender or your belief system or how you live or who you really are, but diverse. How diverse are your tastes? How diverse are your interests? How diverse are your activities in which you engage? How accessible are you? How accessible are you to the next person, to the next municipality, to the next industry, to your own sector, to a sound engineer, to a vocalist? How connected are you? How connected are you to each other? Those three things, I think, if you sort of just take a survey, frankly, and sort of go 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, if you score high on all levels, yourself, using technology, diversity, accessibility, connectivity has really become a lot easier than it was even 2 years ago. It'll become even easier tomorrow than it was today, guaranteed, with the fine folks in all our tech sectors. If you look at those three things, if you score low, chances are you've got an issue and you've got to work on it. If you score high, chances are things are going really well and you can build on that. So I would just encourage everyone, take it home, whether you're an industry leader, a municipality leader, or an artist, look at or you, Amy, but you're pretty connected and accessible and diverse, so you got it covered. Take a look at those three things and see where you land and see how those around you land, and let's build a world that's diverse, accessible, and connected, because that's the only way this is going to get better.
Well, and Mike Tanner always wants the last word, and I'll give it to you, Mike. But I just wanted to build on that because I think connectivity, at least building on that point, actually accessibility, you've hit some really important themes. But I think everyone's trying to do that, to build connections between their cities, their industries, their artist community. Everyone talks about, how do we do that? Do we do that through our advisory councils? Do we do it through subcommittees, your local Junos committee? And so I think everyone is certainly on that level. We're all working in the same direction, and I think you'll all find that I know a lot of you are fairly familiar with each other's strategies and things that have been going on. Honestly, if you sit down and read through them all, there's so many similarities. So I think we are we're obviously all onto something, and I think we can build on those connections here today as well. And oh, Amanda.
So just, I just wanted to say I disagree with everything Zabe said. No. No, I think I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit here in this room, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting next to an elected representative, because I think he's heard me say this, but the message I want to leave everybody with is that if you are a fan of live music, the creative arts, of culture, and you don't know who your elected representatives are at a municipal, provincial, or a federal level, and you're not telling those people what you want and what you believe in, then you're missing the boat. And again, I don't think I'm talking to the room here, but the wider world needs to know that if your local councillor is not hearing from you that you like that band setting up and playing in the park, they're hearing from the 6 people who don't like it. And they will say 100% of the people who phone my constituency office are against this thing going on. So it's up to all of us. It's a democratic principle, and all the people we know to get involved and get active. It's a very easy thing to do. Find out who it is, make the phone call, say, I want more of this, not less of it. It's a sermon.
Always a good point. Thank you, Mike. Amanda.
It is. I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't invite all of you to join us tomorrow in Dundas Square to see the Austin Airstream and enter to win a free trip to Austin, Texas for Austin City Limits Festival. So, hopefully we will see you there.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much. I know this was a highly unusual panel, but I hope you enjoyed it. We thought it was going to be a bit like a game show, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I really appreciate everyone's time that you all came to contribute, and thank you to all of you. And we're going to go upstairs to the rooftop and have a cocktail, and we can chat more. And we're going to join some other folks who are here with another event in the building hosted by SEMA today. So thanks again.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you.